All right. Hello, everyone, again. And so today we'll be doing a dialogue. So the dialogue today will be about from studying to learning. So rethinking educational practices in the digital age. So some goals. So what we aim to explore and learn here is this growing trend of performative studying and contrasted with authentic curiosity-driven learning. So a few of the things we'll discuss will be how certain social media platforms, study aesthetics, and digital influences are shaping our educational habits and really our future. And while doing that, consider different ways to realign our focus toward deeper learning experiences. So aims and goals. So performative studying versus authentic learning, the influences of social media and digital platforms on education, and how mimetic theories are influenced on how we learn, and the importance of curiosity and exploration in learning. So the rise of study aesthetics. So how do you feel about the rise of study aesthetics on social media? Have you noticed how it affects your own study habits? Perhaps if you're not necessarily study habits, but even how you do research and the type of questions that you ask yourself while you're researching questions or perhaps even writing. And so have you noticed how it has affected you or even those of others?
What I can say, it's a synthesis of what you said in the previous hour. I mean, aesthetic is important, not even necessary, but it's important. But it's not sufficient. Even if it is necessary, it is not sufficient. So should be always something more to aesthetics, and this should have more weight than aesthetic, the content. If we can engage both of them, if we can combine both of them, it would be better. But if I have to choose between content and aesthetic, I always have chosen content. So my answer is almost what you said before.
Yeah, and sometimes this rise for aesthetics comes from sometimes a lack of self-understanding. To give you a very personal example, so when I was learning multivariate calculus, the aesthetic way of learning would have meant to go to every lecture and do all the homework and do doing this checklist format. But what I realized is that I could actually learn better with without I could actually learn better, and with this professor who is just super skilled in so much faster. So I would just go to YouTube and watch the lectures there, and I would learn the entire month or the entire 16 weeks of classes in a month or a few weeks instead of just going to every class.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important word, understanding. So I'm gonna use a phrase attributed to Einstein when he used the hyperbole, saying, if you cannot explain it to your grandma, you didn't understand it. So we can know without understanding. We can understand without knowing. But if we understand what we know, that would be a lot better for us and for the other people. So Richard Hoffman have a technique, as you know, that was called learning by teaching, where he tried to apply to make operational this phrase of Einstein. So he has a cybernetic technique where he tried to teach to a 12 years old boy quantum theory and try to find what he could have not understand to do it in another way, in another way, in another way. And that's the way he can understand. In my opinion, or my interpretation, is an applying the knowledge. One way of applying the knowledge is to explain it to your grandma as a hyperbole. If you can do that, you understand what you know. Knowledge is something or yes or not. You understand, you know or do not know. But understanding is always, you can always understand more and more and more and more and more. The same knowledge, you can understand it more and more and more and more and more. So maybe this is one of the definition, I don't like to use the word definition, of wisdom. When you understand that you don't know. My first surprise when I was graduated in electrical engineering was that from a man that he didn't know how to read and write. But what he told me, I felt that I met for the first time in my life, not in the university, but out of the university, I met wisdom. Mm. Because he understood according to the experience of his life. He didn't know that he knew, but he knew what he understood. But he can understand without knowing. For example, the axioms, insight. You understand them, but you don't know them because you never may have a proof of the axiom. This is just a simple example. But you need this understanding with the axiom to build the theorems, to build knowledge. So with understanding, you can build knowledge. But if you have knowledge, you don't necessarily have the understanding. So a word that you mentioned is has an importance, a huge importance, because the university are transmitting knowledge. How about understanding? Is education should be reduced to transmission of knowledge? Or this transmission of knowledge should generate understanding? So this is a question I made to myself. I made to you. I can make to you and to any other. What's the mission of the university? To disseminate knowledge, or to try also to make this knowledge understandable? At least a minimum level of understanding. So if we don't have well, I'm going to give my opinion. This is an opinion. If we don't have a minimum of understanding, I think we don't have education. We have instruction. But this is not education, let alone higher education. I don't know if I could address your question, but I address it in the word that you used, understanding.
Thank you for sharing that. And you're right. Universities are focused on transferring knowledge. But as you said, how about understanding? How about making it part of you and using that to, become wiser and reach that, enlightenment, if you want to put it that way.
And one way of understanding, I really believe that what you do when you try to explain things to the general public or the general students, you are not just providing the product of your understanding, but doing that, you are understanding even more what you understood before. So what this was surprising for me is to see, that you were TED speaker several times. TED speaker should be a person who understands what he knows. Because if not, cannot be TED speaker. I mean, to understand is necessary condition to be a TED speaker, but it's not sufficient. You need other things, and you have these things. But necessary condition is to understand what you're gonna say, not just knowing that and repeat it. So you have this kind of understanding, and you proved it with your TED speaking. So what you can do, if you were my kid, I would tell you, hey, try to develop this natural ability that you have. Yeah, develop it as much as you can.
Yeah, you're right. That's something that I need to continue, and I hope that I can count with your guidance and your many years of decades of experience and how to best develop those intuitive learning in a sense. So
yeah, intuition is a kind of understanding.
Right.
It's a kind of understanding, but you have understanding that is not just for intuition, but taken from knowledge. So insight is one kind of understanding, but you can understand knowledge also if you apply it. The more you apply a knowledge, the more you understand the knowledge. Are we doing that in our universities? Just question. Are we doing that? Are we doing that in the best university in the United States? We are not. Why I am talking about the best university if I were not professor in the best university? My kids, my youngest kid was students in the best university of Florida. And I know what he got is not education, is instruction to pass exams. The exams made by the same professor who is teaching him. Is that education? So as you can see, my problem with education is not just an intellectual one, but a personal one. I felt it with my students as person. I felt it with my kids as father. So this is why your topic is so important, really. This is one of the reasons why it's so important. The more you can, communicate this topic to your colleagues, students, the better.
One of the projects that I'm working on right now, it's something like this. So I'm writing this this book, which will basically be about this topic, which is how do we, but in a accessible manner to a lot of the students who are coming up, and how do we reimagine what education looks like for you, and not necessarily focusing on just getting a job or getting an internship or doing all this checklists again. This like a statized education or even statized college experience, to figure out, okay, what is the first, how to like understanding yourself and reaching that understanding of yourself, but also of the world, and using college as universities as the playground for these activities and for that progress. And how do we actually do that? And just sharing, in the press presentation, I share how I did that and I continue to do that, but how do we actually encourage it? And I think if you share stories and examples and stories are what gets people, and movies and films, and how do we actually do this? And that's a goal of mine, and it has, every project seems to be about that I do. It seems to be about converging into that idea, and the question is, how do we create a cultural movement? Because the culture is that what moves and creates the change, which is what we're looking for. So how do we actually achieve that? And I'll be happy to share with you once I finish it.
Thank you so much. My thanks is not just as chair of the conference, but also as person. From my personal perspective, I'm grateful to you. Because your approach is, I didn't find your approach, your understanding about what is education, I didn't find it anywhere. I hope others can find it more frequently than it was my experience in my life. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and let's continue the conversation and just continue with this goal in this life, and we can see the changes in our kids and the kids with the future.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.